It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Oh, welcome to the Jill on Money show. We are reporting and recording and airing live from the Capital One Bank Studios. Mark, Capital One, what's in your wallet? Now I'm going to say that. I just like that. We were asking for the tagline, so there it is. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. And we try to have a little bit of a sense of humor when we do it. So, I just want to say that in essence, when you hear us and we're laughing a little bit, I'm not laughing at you. I'm trying to bring a little levity to a topic that can be absolutely so boring. Okay? So that is the most important thing here. We're respectful of you. We love you. We thank you for putting your trust in calling us and talking to us. But sometimes we just laugh a little bit because it's hard to talk about some of this material. It can be dry and it can be quite emotional, So we get that. So let's do a little business first. Remember that if you've got a question about anything going on and you need more information about things that we mention here, you can always go to our website, jillonmoney.com. jillonmoney.com. There you can watch stuff that I've been on the air doing. You can read things that we've written, listen to old broadcasts. You can find a nice site where you have a bunch of different resources. You can sign up for our free weekly newsletter. And what else can you do? You can pre-order my new book, The Dumb Things Smart People Do With Their Money. 13 Ways to Right Your Financial Wrongs. That's right. Okay, so right now we are going to, yes, Steve is from Washington State. Hey, Steve, welcome to the program. Steve, I am in negotiations to try to do a big trip out to Seattle. Will you come visit me if I come?
I certainly would.
Fabulous. Fabulous. It would be in downtown Seattle, but I might have to call on you later to ask you about some of the skinny of the local business climate there.
Okay.
All right. So tell me, what can I do for you, sir?
Well, I was listening to your podcast the other week from the gentleman who works for the ice cream company, and it prompted me to give you a contact about my financial situation.
By the way, just want to tell you something. That guy never sent us any ice cream. By the way.
Well,
I mean,
if you come to Seattle, I'll take you to Dick's Drive-In.
Oh, sweet. Okay. So what's going on for you? Tell me about yourself.
Well, I'm single, no children, basically debt-free. I got about $13,000 in debt. Had to buy a new car and took out a $10,000 loan for 3 years and got a roof job done, and I'm getting that paid for with the interest-free credit card. So, 15 months, same as cash.
Okay.
I have a Roth IRA that's around $160,000. And a conventional IRA that I've managed for many years from rollovers from different companies that's worth around $430,000.
Okay.
I'm a year away. Like I said, I'm 64. I can retire at 65 with a pension.
Ooh, what's the pension? How much will the pension be?
Probably about $2,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
And with Social Security, I could probably get another $2,000 a month, depending on when I take it.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be 66 from my age bracket.
Yep.
And so that would be basically what I'm making now. I live, pretty frugally, but I get by just fine. My investments are basically modeled after a portfolio manager, the Brinker models.
Mm-hmm.
The portfolio one is where I have my Roth money, so that's the riskiest, so to speak. And then the portfolio two is where I have my conventional. Now, since I'm kind of getting to the point in life where I'm downshifting a bit, I was wondering if I should maybe move my Roth to the portfolio two, the medium risk, and my conventional to the portfolio three, which is for people who are nearing or already enjoying a retirement lifestyle.
Okay.
So
what's the breakdown in the Roth right now? In that riskiest portfolio, what percentage in stocks, what's in bonds and cash, essentially?
They're all in no load mutual funds. The riskiest one for the Roth is 50% in Vanguard Total Stock, 20% in Vanguard All World, and 15% in Vanguard Small Cap, and 15% in Acri Focus Fund.
Okay. All right. And the other one, Portfolio 2, that is, give me the breakdown there.
It's basically the same breakdown: 10% Acri Focus, 10% Vanguard Small Cap, 10% Vanguard Dividend, 20% Vanguard All World, and 50% Vanguard Total Stock.
Okay. I mean, that's still pretty risky. That's plenty risky for me. Thank you very much. I am so down with you getting out of risky stuff. If you have a moderate tolerance for risk, I should tell you that both of these portfolios are pretty risky. Okay? So this is not for the faint of heart. I mean, essentially, you have like 85% in stocks in that Roth. Now, I know that's the last money you'd want to touch, but why take the risk? You don't need to really tap this money. So if you told me I have 5 kids and I want to leave a legacy to them and it's really their money I'm investing for, that's one thing. But I don't see why you would actually want to challenge yourself to endure another bear market and feel the greatest brunt of that at this point in your life. A nasty bear market can come anytime. I'm not talking about a financial crisis, a nasty bear market. I would absolutely 100% downshift your risk, and essentially in that big $430,000 account, I think that I would probably really want to be more of like a balanced investor, which really would be 50-50, 50 stocks, 50 bonds, cash. That's what I would be shooting for. And don't worry about anything else. By the way, one last thing. You've got debt and you've got assets. So, I mean, okay, you've got a 0% loan for some period of time. You'll pay that off in one fell swoop no matter what. Just make sure that gets paid off. Okay? Totally. All right. That's it. Go forth and multiply. You've done a phenomenal job. And don't take risk when you don't have to. Don't buy a problem, as my father used to say.
Well, and one thing I was thinking also, but since the conventional, I'm probably not going to touch till I'm 70. I'm thinking I'll take my money out of that when I have to, based on my tax bracket and avoiding penalties, and probably just take some skim right off the top and put that into my Roth IRA, just because I don't want to transition too suddenly from one to the other.
I wouldn't. I would leave my Roth. The Roth is the account you should access last. You've already paid your tax on it. So if you need money, a little bit at a time from the conventional, pay the tax that's due, don't worry about it, and then take your required distributions. All right, that's it. That's it, Steve. You're in such good shape, I can let you go after one easy segment. Thank you so much for calling. You are listening to Jill on Money. If you would like to get on the air, just like Steve did, all you have to do is send us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Stay tuned. We've got more of your great questions. We'll be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
Mark loves that bass. He does a little bass air guitar, air bass, as we hear it bring us in from the break. You are listening to Jill on Money. This is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. And I am Jill Schlesinger, and he is Mark Talercio, and he is running everything, including my life. Thank God for Mark is really my daily exhortation. Believe me, I'm so happy and lucky. Really. And if you want, yes, thank you. Namaste. If you want to read how much I love Mark, you'll have to pre-order my new book, the dumb things smart people do with their money, because I think I made his fiance cry a little bit, like got a little teary in the acknowledgments. But it's all the truth. That's why I like to say it publicly. He hates it. Okay, let's go to a caller. It is Ralph, who woke up nice and early for us in the Bay Area. Hello, Ralph. How can I help you out today?
Hi, Jill. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course. What's up?
I wanted to ask you about qualified longevity annuity contracts.
The famous QLAC.
Yes, ma'am.
What's going on in your life that you're considering it?
Well, I'm a single man without children. I'm about to turn 65 and retire from teaching.
Oh, congratulations.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'll be receiving a small pension and a little bit of Social Security. I've saved about $850,000 in a 403B, some in a traditional IRA, and a little bit in a Roth.
Okay.
I don't have any debt. And I was thinking, since I'm probably not going to have any heirs, might it be a good idea for me to pluck out about $130,000 and place it in a QLAC that's supposed to begin when I'm around 80 years of age?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
From my understanding of the QLAC, it pays about $2,000 a month, depending upon which insurance carrier you choose.
Right.
And for the rest of my life. And one of the concerns I have about being a single man without family is that, I may make bad decisions as I get older.
Mm-hmm.
I may need long-term care. I might become senile. I'm frightened of market volatility. And having a QLAC might be sort of a good buffer for me as I get older.
So just so I understand this, you would be using most people look at the QLAC as a way to kind of push off your required minimum distribution till later in your 80s. So mostly it's used as a theoretical way to kind of delay receiving required minimum distributions. Is that what you are using it for, or would you be using it to create income?
Both.
Okay. Which would you say is more important at this point?
I would say probably I'm probably to have the added income at the end, towards the end of my life.
Okay.
Kind of an insurance.
Uh-huh. I mean, so I went to one of the smartest people I know, because I'm not a QLAC expert, but it's a guy named Michael Kitces. He writes a cool, he runs a website called Nerd's Eye View, and it's mostly for nerdy people like him, which would include me. He's a financial advisor, and he wrote very eloquently about the QLAC. So I went to him and kind of wanted to see what was going on. He thinks that, unfortunately, that although it sounds good, it turns out, I'm going to quote him here, it turns out the unique nature of a longevity annuities payment structure is not very hospitable as an RMD deferral strategy. It can take until a retiree's late 80s just to break even and recover principal, which means the retiree risks significant foregone growth by trying to merely defer RMDs through the use of a QLAC. So here's what I would have to say to you about that. I think the problem is that if you want income, then it is reasonable for you to say, hey, I think that I would like to add some income to my pension and my Social Security. I have this traditional IRA. How much is in the traditional IRA?
About $180,000.
Mm-hmm. And there's $850 in the 403B. And right now, the traditional IRA, how is it invested generally?
About 60% equities, about 40% bond.
Mm-hmm. And you like doing this yourself? Are you doing this in a no-load mutual fund environment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really are concerned about income, then what I might look at is to actually look at a low-cost annuity that is just that, not necessarily a QLAC, and it doesn't have to be, it could or it could not be. But I think that low-cost annuities are hard to find, Okay? They really are. And so what I think you might want to do is to say, all right, where can I find a low-cost annuity or a low load? And I might start with Vanguard. Just to where are you holding your accounts right now, your IRA account right now?
Fidelity.
Okay. I've heard of them. I think you should, since you're doing this, I do think that a low load annuity might be something that you should explore. I know one that is that they have through Vanguard. I don't know if Fidelity offers a low load, but if you're seeking to create a stream of income that is going to be uninterrupted, then maybe perhaps you look at an annuity. On the other hand, if you're really worried about sort of like what happens if I lose my mind, I'm wondering, have you done your estate plan? Look, there's a really realistic, have you done estate planning yet?
No, I have not.
So, I mean, look, I think there's another issue here, which is if you have nobody in your family, do you have a friend you would trust, a younger friend who you would trust, or should you just hire someone to act as a trustee on your behalf, an institution that could help oversee any issues that arise if you take a turn for the worst? And so what I'm going to tell you is actually, first and foremost, before you're starting to look at an annuity and doing this, I think you should start looking at your own estate planning. And even though you may not have any heirs, maybe you want to leave money to charity. Maybe you want to have someone have some flexibility and maybe you make a charity the beneficiary of your traditional IRA. And then if something happened to you, then it goes there. Or maybe you want to pay an organization to act as a trustee if something bad were to happen for you. I think this is a story that begins with estate planning. It then incorporates what you're thinking. And then you may find that if you had that person that was in your life for, again, you find a good qualified estate attorney, then you don't need an annuity. That you just have somebody who's going to help administer assets. This could be a really important step for you and not get involved with any insurance product at all. So I think that's where I would start.
Okay.
You think that makes sense?
It sure does.
All right, good. Then go off and make some money. Keep teaching. What do you teach, by the way?
I teach government and history.
You got a lot on your plate right now, mister.
Yes, ma'am, I sure do.
There's a lot of government and there's history being made every day. Thank you so much for calling. Let me know how it goes, okay?
Thanks so much, Jill.
All right, take care. Good luck. Sometimes, you see, it's funny. There we are. We get to the nut question, but only by doing a little digging. It's fascinating to me. It always is. And, hey, estate planning week, Mark. You missed it. Coming to the end of it right now. But it is so important. It is important to distill what is the issue that is really underlying the question. That's what I think is fascinating here. And so thank you so much to Ralph. That was a great question. Fantastic question. If you have a question like Ralph, maybe it's not estate planning, maybe it's an annuity question, maybe it's a plain old retirement plan question, career decision, send us an email. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. That's Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of the show or want to check out a past show, go to JillOnMoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You are back. It's the Jill on Money Show. We are delighted that you are hanging in with us. Hey, look, it's early in the show, so of course you're hanging in with us. But let's try to get some of these emails dealt with, Mark, because, basically, Mark's like, you got to just answer these emails straight up. We're getting really backed up on the inbox. So if you do send us an email, ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com, or just go to the website. Just go to Jill on Money, top right corner, contact us. Easiest way to get in touch with us. Oh, by the way, while you're there, sign up for our free newsletter, free weekly newsletter. So easy to do. So that website is jillonmoney.com. So if you send us an email or contact us, we may not get back in touch with you immediately. You'll get a quick note that just says, hey, thanks. But we got to answer your question, and there's so many. And, we can go back in time, like months and months, because sometimes I try to hold the questions when I have more than one about a similar topic. Okay? So Ira says that he recently attended an investment and financial planning seminar, and it was actually regarding retirement planning. It was presented by a local planner. The woman seemed very knowledgeable. Her presentation was quite comprehensive. When reviewing her background and experience, she mentioned to the group that she held the following titles and credentials: licensed investment advisor, representative. Okay, so an investment advisor, that's just a license. You have to take a Series 65, and it's just a license that you can be an investment advisor. You're licensed with the SEC. Life, health, and annuity insurance license, both in her state and another, and then two other designations: Chartered Retirement Planning Counselor, CRPC, Registered Financial Consultant. After the seminar, Ira goes and asks her, hey, you also have a CFP? And he writes, I wanted to know this information because I am familiar with the CFP discipline and training from a friend of mine. I believe he's told me the CFP educational program and training is rigorous and extensive. The woman said that while she was not a CFP, the CRPC program was comparable and perhaps a little bit more encompassing. I wasn't familiar with the CRPC program, no harm. Anyway, I thought it'd be helpful for me to ask your opinion on the CFP and CRPC designations and programs, and perhaps you can offer an objective comparison of the two titles and the role of each in the retirement planning process. Thank you in advance. I look forward to your words of wisdom. Ira. So there are so many designations, and so let me just state that my objective view is not objective because I hold the CFP designation. And so I'm tilted towards that one. Okay. That said, there are designations that are crazy. There's so many letters. It's like an alphabet soup. I think that there was a study done that there was something like 200 different titles and designations that were out there. Very confusing. But I did want to talk to somebody who kind of understands this. And when I did that, I did find out that this title, the CRPC, which is, interesting in just, again, because I never heard of it, is a mark that actually comes from the College for Financial Planning. That was the one that originated the CFP. And so, I mean, it's a legitimate title. I cannot say whether or not I would be able to say whether one is better or equal to the other. I guess that's my most important piece. The registered financial consultant, I don't know, that seems like kind of a FINRA one, I think. That's from the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. Here's what it says here. A candidate has to have 3 years full-time experience as a financial planning practitioner. So that's the same as a CFP. Required licenses to engage in financial planning profession. A sound record of business integrity. No suspension or revocation of any professional designations or licenses. Must be in good standing with all licensing bodies. Education requirements are, it's funny. It's not dissimilar. I mean, it basically says if you have a CFP or one of these other designations, you have some licenses, an insurance license, you can. I think that the education requirements are pretty tepid on this one. So now we're really getting back to this question of the retirement, chartered retirement planning counselor. I mean, look, I think that these designations can be really helpful because you say somebody is actually trying to show a rigor and an approach to financial planning that makes sense for you. Now, that said, I think that if this person is trying to give retirement advice, just know that because she is licensed to sell stuff, you might find that advice contains something that would suggest you should buy, say, insurance, because that's something that she's got a life, health, and annuity insurance license. If you could pay this woman and you were impressed with her and you checked, kind of looked at her credentials and you felt good about this, what I would say is I'd be interested to find out whether she would essentially be able to do a retirement plan for you for a fixed fee, a flat fee. And if that's the case, then you know what, Ira? Not a problem. But until I understand how she actually charges you, it's hard for me to tell you just do it based on a designation or not. I mean, that's the same thing with any designation. I mean, you're a CFP, you're a board certified surgeon, all these things. You still have to go deeper. Do I like this person? How am I paying this person? What are my expectations from this person? All these questions are good questions to ask. And you know what, Ira? If you want to go back and kind of interview her, we do have on the website, JillOnMoney.com. Just go to the resource tab and we have the 10 questions you should ask before you hire a financial advisor of any sort, regardless of designation. Okay, when we return, we are going to answer more of your questions. In the interim, you too can go on the website. You can read, listen, watch, look at the new resources all the time. JillOnMoney.com. The show will continue in just a moment.
Have a finance question? There are many ways to reach the show. You can call anytime at 855-411-JILL, send an email to askjill@jillonmoney.com, or tweet a question on Twitter using the handle @JillOnMoney. Just use the hashtag AskJill.
You're back with Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Very easy to do. All you have to do is send us a note. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com. Okay, that is what Elizabeth did. 3 years ago, she signed up with a financial person who deals with Morningstar Investments. They sold and rebought stocks. Oh boy, I wound up paying thousands of my taxes, and I believe I'm paying more in taxes than I earn. I don't hear from them, just the statements. I want to take my stuff elsewhere. But where? $120,000 in stocks. I'll be 68 in November, still working, collect Social Security, still have a mortgage of $70,000. Please help out. Okay, so first and foremost, I think you have to decide, do you need an investment person or an advisor? If you just wanted to invest someplace, if you had $120,000 in stocks, first of all, I think you don't probably have enough money that it actually makes sense for you to be buying individual stocks. So then you say, okay, well, I want to buy low-cost mutual funds, index funds. You could literally open up an account anywhere you want. You could open up an account at Vanguard or at Fidelity or at T. Rowe Price or at TD Ameritrade, or you can go directly to Charles Schwab. And then you sell all your stuff. Hopefully there's no big tax event there because it sounds like you've paid taxes along the way. And you buy a couple index funds and you go to sleep at night. But maybe you're actually thinking about this and wondering if you should actually have a relationship with someone who can give you advice. And in that case, there's also some more choices. You can go to an automatic investment platform, an online financial advisor. Betterment is a company. They sponsor my podcast, but you could go Betterment. You can go to Wealthfront. You could go and check out Vanguard has these personalized services, so you may want to check those out. But if you really think you want a person, it's going to be expensive because you just don't have that much money that is invested from their perspective. I know it's all your money in the world. So I would suggest that you start the process by going to our website, JillOnMoney.com, And you can look at the questions you should ask before you hire a financial advisor. Okay, I hope that helps. Margaret writes, if I donate part of my 2018 required minimum distribution from my 401k plan to a charity, can I reduce my taxable income by the amount of that donation? Almost. Close, but not all the way here, Margaret. You can't do it directly from your 401k, but if you are no longer contributing to your 401k, you could roll over your 401k, right? You could roll over a portion of your 401k into an IRA rollover. And then from the IRA rollover account, you could do a qualified charitable deduction. And what that means is you would gift some portion of money to the charity directly, and that could be your required minimum distribution. You don't take a tax deduction for it, but it literally bypasses taxation. So let's say you had to take out, your RMD was $10,000. You took a portion of your 401k, you roll it over from 401k to an IRA. Then you make this QCD, okay? And that qualified charitable distribution, I said deduction, I meant to say distribution. That QCD bypasses the taxes you would have paid, and the money goes straight to the charity. So it exempts you from paying tax on that minimum required distribution. But it has to come from an IRA, and you've got to be, obviously you're taking your required minimum distribution, so you're over 70 and a half. Okay? So you're going to have to put the money into an IRA to make this happen. And if you have more questions about that, we would be delighted to assist you. QCD. I happen to think that's a darn good tool that people overlook. But, of course, you have to make sure you don't actually need the money. Okay? Iris wants to know if she has to keep her papers for a house closing for a house she sold 9 years ago. I'm going to say no. I don't think you need that at all. So I don't think, I'm sure that can go into the old shredder, especially if you sold the house and you don't need any, you paid the taxes on it. You're now past that 7-year time horizon. I'd say fire up the shredder. Get going. Here's somebody who's asking about credit card debt and wants to know about the debt relief companies. He says, I don't know if they're legitimate. Guess what? I don't think they're legitimate either. I think they're legitimate. Most of them are legitimate, but they're a ripoff. And the ones that aren't legitimate, you want to stay away from. So I think that for a lot of people who are in credit card debt and they're worried about interest rates going up, I worry about home equity loans. He asked about, should I get a home equity line of credit? It could be a good way to go, but you may want to just try a plain old installment loan. And there are a lot of companies that are starting to do this. We had one of these guys on the air with us, two of the guys rather, from Marcus by Goldman Sachs, and they're personal installment loans. And I think that meaning that you take the money from them and then you start paying, and they're no fee, they're fixed rates. You can borrow up to $40,000. So I would check that out. Go to marcus.com and try that one. Whew, got through a lot of emails on that little segment there, right, Mark? Very proud of myself. Okay, you're listening to Jill on Money. Hop onto our website, jillonmoney.com. Sign up for our free weekly newsletter. We'll be right back. You're back with Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. Just go to jillonmoney.com, click on the Contact Us button. Tell us what's going on. Okay, our question from Liz, who is one of 3 beneficiaries of an annuity. Her portion totals around $70,000. She says, I know if I take it as a lump sum, there will be large tax implications. I would like to divide it among my Roth IRA, my kids' 529, and the remainder in my Vanguard money market account. There are a lot of different options that she outlines from the paperwork. A single payment lump sum distribution, annuity payments, direct transfer, non-spousal beneficiary continuation. So I think this might have been a qualified annuity, meaning it's probably an IRA account That would be my guess, just because you said there are large tax implications, which means the money in the account has not yet been taxed. So let's presume it's a retirement account. If that's the case and you don't want to take a lump sum distribution, the other thing you can do is a direct transfer into a beneficiary IRA account in your name. So the money would go from annuity to brokerage account, just straight through. And as long as that's a retirement account to a retirement account, you can do it. The problem is that once you do that, then you can slowly take the money out as a beneficiary at whatever timetable you want and can put it into your kids' 529s and the Vanguard money market. And you can even convert that into a Roth IRA. But every time you take money out of this account, you will have to pay tax. So that is going to be your issue, because presumably if it's a qualified annuity, whoever owned that policy, your dad in your circumstance, didn't pay tax on it yet. So money is going to come out. You're going to pay tax. So the best thing I can advise you to do is to look at your tax situation over the next few years and put a game plan together where you slowly but surely start taking the money out. I would absolutely try to do a direct transfer and then see what your choices are from there. Okay? I hope that helps. You're listening to Jill on Money. And next hour, we've got an interview. We've got fun and excitement with your questions. If you want to reach us, just go to the website, JillOnMoney.com. While you're there, sign up for our free weekly newsletter. Free. JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome. It's hour number 2 of Jill on Money. That was a good first hour. We are broadcasting live from the Capital One Bank Studios here on the far west side of New York, which I refuse to call Hell's Kitchen because it feels too far west, Mark. I'm sorry. I know, technically it is. Is it Clinton or not? Mark used to live here, so he's the resident expert before he went with all the kids and millennials down to the Lower East Side. Yeah, he's loving that. Okay, we've got a great treat for you this hour. First of all, if you are a person of a certain age, over 50, you might be feeling like you're a little bit out of sorts at work, not valued. Well, our guest, Chip Conley, is about to explain how you can really reframe what you do in your workplace. Now, Chip was the owner of a boutique hotel chain called Joie de Vivre. You may have seen his TED Talk. He's just written a new book called Wisdom at @Work. And we're having him on because he is speaking to this idea that now that he's at Airbnb, he's reframed his great experience. And you can too. Here's the first part of our interview with Chip Conley. Let's talk a little bit about the Airbnb part of this, and then we'll get into your book. So I have a separate book here.
I love Lee.
Okay, lovely. Also, friend of the pod, friend of the show.
Yep.
In her Airbnb story, here she describes you.
Uh-oh.
So Brian Chesky read your book, Peak, How Great Companies Get Their Mojo from Maslow. And the book's author, I'm reading now, quoting from Lee Gallagher's book, The Airbnb Story. And listeners, you remember we had Lee on the show a few different times. The book's author was Chip Conley, the founder of the Joie de Vivre boutique hotel chain, which he started in San Francisco in 1987. Over time, Conley himself had become something of a guru.
Oh.
I love that. In Peak, he explained
That's just because I'm bald.
Oh, stop now. Okay. You know, in that book, you basically applied the teachings of psychologist Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the pyramid of physical and psychological needs humans must have met in order to achieve their full potential, with food and water at the bottom and self-actualization at the top, to corporate and individual transformation. Now, self-actualization at the top sounds a tiny bit unga-bunga, San Francisco Bay Area crap to me. Can you explain it?
Abraham Maslow was a good Jewish boy who spent some time in New York teaching. Created this in the mid 20th century, and the premise was being all you can be. You know, that was a U.S. Army line in an ad campaign that they got from Maslow. Maslow said self-actualization is basically being all you can be. And so, it does sound a little bit, new age, but the bottom line is anybody in their work and in their life would like to be all they can be, if assuming that they are engaged with life. And so the premise of that book, Peak, was really to help people to understand how to create an organization that can have a collection of individuals being all they can be.
Do you think that in corporate America that it seems to me at least, I interview tons of these CEOs and C-suite people, and on the record and off the record, it seems like we've kind of gotten away from that. I mean, they say be all you can be, but they really mean be all you can be so we can maximize profits.
Well, I don't think that's been the case forever.
Right.
I do think that there's a shift that's slightly positive that's moving. In 2007, the iPhone was created. And since that time, we cannot look at work-life balance as even a phrase that makes any sense at all. Because when you have an iPhone or you have everything on a laptop and you're basically blending your work and your life, I think what companies now need to do is create a sense of purpose so that employees feel engaged to be there. Otherwise, it's not like you can sort of leave your life at the door when you walk into the office. Your work is at nighttime and on weekends. And so I think more and more companies actually have to live up to something that's beyond just profit. There's got to be a purpose there in order to be a magnet for great talent.
It's interesting. So then, because I think that is especially true when you think of younger workers. Mm-hmm. But you've sort of learned and came to this. I was going to say, you came to this in your 50s after you have near 50 with this terrible health crisis, and then asking yourself, what is it that I really want? And then it seems to me from reading this book and your book, at that point, the folks at Airbnb, Chesky basically saying, you come work with me.
Yeah, I was 52 years old. I'd sold my company a couple years earlier, and I was, there's a great Robert De Niro quote in the movie The Intern. He says, "Musicians don't retire; they quit when there's no more music left inside of them." So I was 52. I had music inside of me. I just wasn't sure who to share it with. Brian came to me at just the right time. I didn't really know what Airbnb was.
I was going to say, so you weren't following that as someone in the industry.
I'm in San Francisco. Airbnb is based in San Francisco. I thought Airbnb was a subsidiary of Couchsurfing. I didn't really understand it. I had never heard of the phrase the sharing economy 5.5 years ago. I did not have an Uber or Lyft app on my phone. All of that was true, but I was sort of curious. And so I sat down for coffee with Brian, and I was really impressed by how much of a growth mindset he had. He was just so curious himself. And he said, let's go democratize hospitality together. And I said, well, that sounds pretty good.
And so you started with, I think, 8 hours a week, and then it was 15 hours a week. What's your role there? What were you called when you brought in?
When I came in, it was supposed to be a part-time role. It became full-time almost overnight and 70 hours a week quite quickly. And I was called the head of global hospitality and strategy. And for 4 years was in that role. But I was also Brian's mentor. I mean, I was really his in-house mentor. But what I started to realize, and this gets to my book, is that after the first week, I realized I have all of this accumulated knowledge, but a lot of it's not that relevant. It doesn't really matter in the home sharing world how many rooms a maid cleans in an 8-hour shift. But they brought me in for my knowledge, but actually what I started to offer was, I guess what I would say is my well-earned wisdom. And a lot of that was around emotional intelligence and leadership skills.
You mentioned something that's kind of interesting to me. I'm a numbers person. I love this stuff. The median age of employees in the United States is 42. That number is more than a decade younger among tech titans. And a Harvard Business Review study showed the average age of founders of unicorns, that's those companies with more than $1 billion in valuation, is 31.
Yeah.
And you say the acceleration of innovation made the elder less relevant.
Yeah. I mean, let's be clear. I think the elder became less relevant when we went from the agricultural age to the industrial age because brawn became the big thing in the industrial age. And now brain has become the big thing in the technological age. And, brawn and brain is not why we necessarily look to our elders. But the big shift that I think is happening is that as power is cascading to young people faster than ever before in business, there's no doubt because of our increasing reliance on digital intelligence, or what I call DQ. We are expecting these young digital leaders to miraculously embody the relationship wisdoms we elders have had decades to learn. I think that's the opportunity, is let's pair these brilliant technologists with people who have a few extra decades of experience, judgment, and emotional intelligence to actually create a great company. If Travis at Uber had done that, he still might have his job.
We'll get back to our interview with Chip Conley in just a minute. Hey, during the break, why don't you check out his TED Talk? Mark, let's make sure we put a link to that in the show notes. Or hop on over to Jill on Money. You can order the book, which is coming out in February. You can pre-order it right now. Just go to JillOnMoney.com, click on the book, and you can pre-order. We'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
Sometimes Mark tells me how much time I have for this intro, and I just forgot to start my stopwatch on my handy-dandy iPhone, which I'm going to replace very shortly. Stinks, by the way. I got a voicemail 4 days after the person left it for me. What is up with that, Apple? I don't think that that's an issue with my phone provider. Do you, Mark? No, it can't be. I think this is a hardware problem. Anyway, you are listening to Jill on Money, and this is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. I am Jill Schlesinger, and, we try to bring you fun and entertaining interviews in the second hour, and I just adored this guy. I wasn't expecting to like him as much as I did. However, as Mark always likes to remind me, every time I think, it's not going to be a great interview, I meet the person and am pleasantly surprised. Mostly because I am a voyeur and I love just talking to people. But this guy, Chip Conley, is I think a special case. And, one really significant issue that impacted Chip's life is that he had a terrible scare, a health scare, in his late 40s. And I only bring that up because we're just finishing estate planning week. And just a gentle reminder, gang, get your estate planning stuff. Just get it done. Talk to an estate attorney, a qualified estate attorney, not the person who did your real estate closing, not the woman who negotiated your divorce, an estate planning attorney with that expertise. Please, please do that. And, we're talking about what is midlife. Yes, we're all going to live longer, chances are. One of the cool things is that because of that, because we are all likely to live longer, Chip Conley says we need to redefine what midlife really means.
First of all, for those of us who are in midlife, and let's all start by saying midlife, I think, has actually changed. It used to be 45 to 65. Today, I think it's 35 to 75 because people feel irrelevant earlier. Because there are more people in this midlife marathon and feeling a little confused by it, I think the key is to start saying which habitats are going to be open to your wisdom. And so one of the things that I had that was fortunate for me was I was in an industry, hospitality, and the founders of Airbnb had started in that field but had nobody in the company with a hospitality background. So start by asking, is there a field or an industry? You may be in healthcare and you have some people who want to disrupt healthcare and they've got some great technology, but they really don't understand how the industry works, or they don't have the contacts. They don't have a Rolodex. That know-how and that know-who. The combination of those two together is something you have going for you, especially if it's in an industry where people are learning the industry along the way. So I think that was helpful. I think also what was helpful is it was clear that Brian and his co-founders really wanted to learn from me. Why? because they asked me a lot of questions. Rather than sort of having me in the room and then on occasion just saying, okay, let's trot Chip out and talk about hospitality, they started looking at me. 3 weeks into it, Brian said, you're in charge of strategy now. So I was supposed to be just in charge of hospitality, and 3 weeks into it, I'm now in charge of strategy for the company, which was not something I asked for, but he clearly saw that I had a strategic mind. So that was great. So, but let me just say, I had, the book Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder, is full of examples, 150 examples beyond me. I am an unusual case in the sense that the founders of this company asked me to join them. That doesn't happen a lot for people in their 50s.
I think that there's something interesting you point out. Many people face their modern elder years with a sense of anxiety. I hear that anxiety. Yeah. We have people who call the show up and they're in their 50s. And I have friends, obviously, I'm sure you have the same thing. You have a group of friends, you grew up with them or you went to college with them. And they're in this place where they just don't know how to channel themselves into a next chapter. Yeah. And there's anxiety, financial anxiety, obviously, which you probably didn't have as much. But I think that sometimes people stay stuck in a place where they feel like they're becoming obsolete and kind of like running out the clock and don't know how to make a move. And I find that to be that's pretty consistent.
It's really consistent. We have we started something called the Modern Elder Academy, which is a social enterprise. So it's we have half the people coming on scholarship, where people come to a campus on a beachfront in Baja, which is in Mexico.
Amen.
Yes, and they come and they learn about how to evolve into a modern elder. What the 4 steps that are outlined in the book, so you don't have to go to Mexico necessarily to do this. Are, number 1, you have to evolve, and this is the hardest step because many of us. It would have been very hard for me, if I think back on it, to be 52 years old. I've run my own company, for 24 years, and now I'm actually reporting to someone who's 21 years younger than me. Ouch. 40% of us in the workplace have a boss younger than us, and that's actually only growing as a phenomenon. So if I didn't evolve and say, okay, I'm no longer the sage on the stage, the leader of the company, but I'm the guide on the side. I'm the person who's helping this guy, Brian, be successful. And I had to right-size my ego. So that was one form of evolving I needed to do. And that idea of evolving is not just in your identity, but it's in what you know. And that gets you to the second lesson, which is to learn. So the first 2 lessons are evolve and learn, which are 2 things that, frankly, people in midlife often feel like they don't want to do because it takes work.
Right. And it's uncomfortable. The idea of uncertainty is something that grips us often as we get older. And that uncertainty can come from feeling ageism in the workplace, right?
Sure.
That you feel like, oh my God, I could be, one round of layoffs, right, away from being at sea. What are some things we can develop while we're still working to try to help us get to the next stage before that happens?
So uncertainty is painful, but irrelevancy is worse. And so
that's a good motto.
It's not in the book. I just came up with it right here.
That's good.
You and me, Jill. We're going on the road. So the bottom line is, I think that if you do the math, let me just start by saying this. I'm 57 years old. I hung out with my dad, in scuba diving with him in rural Indonesia in May. My dad's 81 this month. And my dad and I took one of those online tests where it says how long you're going to live to.
Yeah.
For both of us, it said we're going to live till we're 98. So if I'm 57 now and I'm going to live till 98, you can do the math. I am 39 years into my adulthood. And I have 41 years of adulthood ahead of me. I am less than halfway through my adult part of my life. When you think that way, you realize, my gosh, I have a lot of time ahead of me, which means that you're maybe more willing to have a beginner's mind and be a little bit curious about things that you might say, yeah, let me try that out. I'm going to be a beginner. And the idea of being in midlife, let's look back. In childhood, we had to learn how to walk, which means we had to fall down a few times. And we've had to do things in our life where we've had to be not very good at it. Learning a language at 57, I'm learning Spanish and learning surfing. Last year, learning to surf. This is not the thing that people in their 50s do, but the process is great. It creates curiosity, and curiosity is an elixir for having a life-affirming kind of experience. So long story short is, once you realize that it's not over at age 50, you're open to maybe trying some things and looking awkward along the way, but having fun and being able to laugh at yourself.
Can you explain this role that you have at Airbnb and as a modern elder? You say that you have to be an editor.
Yeah.
Explain what you mean by that.
Well, there's a great book that Jonathan Rauch brought out recently called The Happiness Curve, and it goes into great detail about the fact that, frankly, people get happier starting around 50. Your 40s are your worst decade. The reason for that is because we tend to accumulate up until about age 50. What does that mean? Well, you accumulate friends, you accumulate relationships, or you might accumulate children and having kids. You accumulate roles and responsibilities and things you do for nonprofits. And by the time you get to your 40s, it's a mishmash of so many things that you really don't feel like you have much control or freedom in your life. And so you accumulate in the first half of your life, you edit in the second half of your life. And we see this a lot with people in their homes. They have a big home, then they become an empty nester, and then they downsize. That's an example of editing. The process of editing your life down to what's important to you, including who you want to spend time with and what you want to do, is a really valuable exercise because it means you start focusing on what makes you happy.
Okay, we'll get back to our interview with Chip in just a minute. If you've got a financial question, we'd love to hear from you. The email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Do I invest here? Should I put my money there? Jill Schlesinger can help you. Back to Jill on Money.
You're back with Jill on Money. Have you signed up for our free weekly newsletter, by the way? I'm getting some nice comments on it. If you want to see my pearls of wisdom and others, just hop on to jillonmoney.com and you can sign up for our free weekly newsletter. Okay, we're getting back to our interview with Chip Conley. And his book is called Wisdom at Work. And when you think about wisdom in the workplace, what can somebody who is 50-something help explain to some of the younger employees out there? Maybe it's the things that we, our generation, over 50, take for granted. Or maybe even over 40. Now that Mark's in that range, I can actually put him right in there. Things like being accountable, like answering your emails on time, arriving to a meeting. All these things are actually hard for many younger employees to value. And maybe when you hear it from someone who's successful and engaged like Chip, it will break through. So here's more of our interview, the last part, with Chip Conley. If you're at work, how does being an editor play out? What happens for you in the workplace?
It's a few things. One truism about wisdom is it's not about a math equation where you're arithmetically adding things. It's about actually a division equation. You are actually distilling down what's most important. So wisdom is about actually an editing process. My process at Airbnb, and I've seen it with many, many other so-called modern elders in young companies, is that the person who's older is able to actually see what's important. One of the things that's true about our brains is as we get older, yes, our recall's not as good. The thing that's interesting about our as we age, we get four-wheel drive with our brain. There's all these studies that have shown that you are able to shift from left to right brain a lot more fluently when you get older. What does that mean? It means you get the gist of things and you're more of a systems or holistic thinker. In essence, you can see the forest and not get too caught up in the trees. And that kind of thinking means that you're able to be able to edit what was the most important thing that came out of that meeting. Or what is it, in my case at Airbnb, when I joined, we had way, way too many initiatives. And it was like, let's get it down to just 4. We're going to focus on 4 things. Exactly. So that kind of thinking is really valuable in the workplace. And it means, frankly, sometimes people lean into listening to you because when you actually say, I think we need to do fill in the blank, they're realizing that you're thinking in a very holistic way.
And it seems to me that because, look, the boss bought into you, right, early on, that tone from the top would filter down. Did you encounter any resistance within the ranks? Talk about that.
Well, so I'm in Silicon Valley. Airbnb is a tech company, and everybody's metric driven. So
Just want to blow my brains out when they say things like that.
no, but it's true. They're just like they want prove it to me. Show
I
me,
know.
show me the numbers.
Right.
Da, 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 da. And I gave a talk at the TED conference 8 years ago about what measuring what matters. And the truth is, sometimes certain things are harder to measure. Many things in life are hard to measure, but that doesn't mean that they're not valuable. And so one of the challenges I had at Airbnb on occasion is knowing that our host community, and I was in charge of all the hosts globally, knowing there's certain things we can do for them. Danny Meyer, famous restaurateur, love him. He's a good friend of mine. He said, hospitality is when someone does something for you, not to you. My premise at Airbnb is, what are we doing for our hosts? We got then to the point of like, okay, how do you measure that loyalty? And I said, you measure the loyalty by people staying on the platform and continuing. Yes, we can ask them, are they happy with us? Are they satisfied, etc.? All of that's true. But at the end of the day, loyalty can be measured in terms of how they show up. And that's like, at the end of the day, Airbnb continues to grow partly because of that. But, I will say that I did have to, occasionally prove things with my numbers.
When you spoke like that, did you get a sense of this kid is not getting what I'm saying?
Well, I think the key I learned very long ago at Airbnb, 5.5 years now that I've been there, you've got to intern publicly and mentor privately.
That's good.
So what you just said is a really great example. If someone's not getting it in a meeting, the intent is not for me to school them in the meeting like their parent. The intent is for me in the meeting to actually be the most curious person in the room, which is also meaning often I was the dumbest person in the room when it came to technology. But the fact that I could take that person aside and say, hey, let's go have coffees. Let's spend a half hour talking this through. And then in that half hour, be a little bit more persuasive. And it worked usually.
I love this. Intentionally building your reputation. I did highlight this.
Yes.
Almost always arriving on time for meetings.
Yeah, that was a big one. Because the company, honestly, I mean, listen, let's just be honest. Like, this is true in most companies, but especially in young companies where you have half-hour meetings. Your whole day is punctuated with half-hour meetings, which means the meeting goes 5 minutes long. If you're already 5 minutes late to the next meeting, even before you haven't walked there. So there's a sense of respect that's paid when people show up on time for a meeting. It says, I'm here. And so I just, I didn't have to tell people the rule. I just showed up with it.
Responding expeditiously, especially to emails from hosts and guests. I love this because I feel like you and I came of age at a time where, first of all, we would first have an answering machine, right? And then you're like, oh my God, there's something on my answering machine. I was in a client business, right? I manage money for people. I was a financial planner. Not answering an email is tantamount to like throwing a dagger in my heart. I would never do that.
It's such a sign of disrespect. And
right?
I just want to be really clear. And it's so commonplace that my intent here is not to have you listeners feel like I'm telling you you're a jerk. But I want to say that it's one of the ways you influence your reputation. When you respond at all, it helps. When you respond quickly, it shows it's particularly important. And I learned this in the hotel business the hard way.
What are you trying to do beyond just this book?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. Number one is I'd love to make aging aspirational again. The idea that we could actually see that, frankly, some of the best part of our life, that there's an amazing benefits that come the second half of midlife. And helping people to see that and then see that companies could use that and then create a new kind of generational compact. The idea that the movement would be around how do we see aging as a part of society that isn't something that we just sort of shudder off to retirement homes, but instead it's actually there's something to be learned from the younger generation, and it goes in both directions. That the physics of wisdom can flow in both directions, from young to old and from old to young.
Thanks so much to Chip for joining us today. We'll have a link to his book, Wisdom at Work, and his TED Talk, which he just laid down. And if you've got a financial question, we want to hear from you. All you have to do is send an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. When we return, more of your questions. We'll be right back.
Follow Jill on Twitter and Instagram for more personal finance content. Just use the handle @JillOnMoney. Now, back to the show.
You're back with Jill on Money. If you've got a financial question, we want to hear from you. Just send us an email. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. You want to kind of immerse yourself a little bit more in the Jill on Money world. You can go to our website, jillonmoney.com. And there you can read or listen or watch some of the stuff that we do. You can also sign up for our free weekly newsletter. Check out our podcast. You can get it on Apple, Stitcher, radio.com, Google Play, anywhere else you find your favorite podcast. It's called Better Off. You can subscribe. It's kind of good. Okay, let's go and clean out some email. Mike says, in past years, we were able to write off $26,000 in itemized deductions and also $16,000 for personal exemptions for our family of four. That totaled $42,000. Now, with the new tax brackets, it looks like we will only be able to write off $24,000. Is that true? Well, so two things. First, you've got to determine, are you going to claim the standard deduction or are you going to itemize? There's a few things about itemized deductions that you should note. First of all, you are limited in your itemized deductions for state and local taxes to $10,000 overall. You also, if your charitable contribution limit for your cash donations is limited to 60% of your adjusted gross income. I think for most people, that's not going to matter. Medical expenses deductible in excess of 7.5% of your adjusted gross income. So you total up all your itemized deductions and you say to yourself, is that more than what I would claim for the standard deduction? So if you had $26,000 in itemized deductions in the past, presuming that some of that is state and local taxes, we don't know because I don't know where you're from. But if that reduces, if your state and local tax part of it, let's pretend that you had $15,000 in state and local taxes. Well, you're capped at just 10. So then you have to then add up all your other itemized deductions to see if it makes sense. And if it adds up to more than $24,000, then you would have to itemize. But if it's less than $24,000, then you would just basically claim the standard deduction, which is $24,000. So you lose the personal exemptions. That just went away. The real question is, once you've made that decision, all is not lost. Maybe your tax bracket went down. Maybe all of a sudden your tax bracket, which was, 28-ish, goes down to 22. So you didn't mention how much, what your income was, but you may find that your total tax picture improved. I don't know because I don't know what last year was, but that's the big decision around standard versus itemizing. Your standard deduction is $24,000 for married filing jointly. You've got to tally up all the itemized deductions, including the new limitations, and see if it's more. And then we'll figure it out. But no, you don't get those, unfortunately, those personal exemptions anymore. Okay? Rob wants to know a strategy for creating income during his retirement. He's 54. He says he's a computer programmer, and he would love the option of renting or cutting back at 60. I'd feel most comfortable knowing that I could have $100,000 a year in pre-tax in retirement income. No pension, other or expected income stream other than Social Security. He makes $150,000 a year. He contributes $30,000 to his 401k with a company match. His retirement savings, he's got about a $1.1 million and regular investments of $900,000. So he's got $2 million, okay? And he's got, let's say, 5 more years where he's putting away, let's see, 150. I'm doing quick math. Let's say that by the time he retires in 5 or 6 years, that he's got, I'm going to say conservatively, with very minimal growth, $2.3 million. I don't think he says if he's married or not, does he, Mark? I don't think so. No, I don't think so. So let's say that you're looking at $2.3 million. What you could say is maybe it's 2.4, but let's say you got about $70,000 pre-tax from that money, and then you got Social Security pre-tax, probably about right. You probably just about hit it. But let me give you a caveat here. I really would feel more comfortable if you didn't do this. since you say it doesn't have to be written in stone, you could cut back at age 60. But what are you going to do until you claim Social Security? That's a problem, because then my little scenario of having that money, that 2.3, doesn't work as well because you're invading the account to live your life. So here's my game plan for you. You're 54. Maybe at age 60, you could reduce the amount of work you do. Or maybe you say, I go part-time. You're a computer programmer. I presume you could basically kind of chill out and get a job almost anywhere or just reduce hours. You don't make as much money. You don't put as much money away. But you work enough from age 60 until your Social Security full retirement age to pay your bills. So maybe instead of making $150, you could make $100. And that's enough to cover your bills. And that's enough to kind of float you until your full retirement age. That would be my game plan. You buying in, Mark, or not? You don't think he's going to buy in? He said he doesn't want it written in stone. He can reduce his hours. I don't know. You're not buying it. I'm hopeful. You're listening to Jill on Money, where hope springs eternal. Yes, indeed. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com is our email address. And if you've got a question, just let us know. You can also go to the website, JillOnMoney.com. Check out all the other fun stuff we do. With you and with all of our other guests, we are going to return and answer more of your questions. We'll be right back. You're back with Jill on Money. And before we wrap up the show, I want to try to get through a couple of emails. If you have a question, we'd love to hear from you. Just send us a note. Ask Jill at JillOnMoney.com or head to the website. Just go to JillOnMoney.com. Why don't you bookmark it? It's a favorite. You know it's a favorite. Just do that. And we have a Contact Us button. Here's a message from William, who receives a railroad retirement benefit. He says, I'm also eligible to receive Social Security benefits from having worked some years with non-railroad companies. I'm interested to know if I can collect these monthly Social Security payments in addition to my monthly railroad retirement benefits. I don't think you can, I have to say. I'm not sure. But what I would do is I would absolutely go and check with maybe somebody at the railroad retirement. But I think the railroad retirement is actually a better retirement system than Social Security. So anyway, double check with that, because railroad awards are usually higher than Social Security. I read this, that average railroad annuities in 2017 averaged $4,000 a month. And the average under Social Security is $1,850. So I'm disinclined to believe that you'll get both. So you should check it out. I'm not an absolute expert on the railroad retirement, but that's what I think. Here's a question, speaking about a pension. My wife and I are trying to decide about choosing a 50% marital pension or a 100% marital pension. What should we know? I think this is this is a wonderful idea to spur you to go see a financial planner, maybe someone who you can pay by the hour, because this has a lot to do with what your overall retirement looks like. Because in most cases, a 100% marital pension literally means that if you were to drop dead, your wife gets zero. And you can insure against that, but that may be expensive as well. So I'm going to recommend that you go check out a fee-only planner. Go to NAPFA, N-A-P, P as in Peter, NAPFA.org. All right, that's it. That's the show. Thank you so much for listening. It's been our great pleasure and privilege. Remember, anytime, anywhere, JillOnMoney.com. That will help you get more information. We would love to hear from you, so just contact us. Click on that Contact Us button, and we would be happy to help you out. Okay, we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.